Welcome to the Careers by Jen podcast, episode 195. Today on the podcast, Jen's guest is Romanella, who will talk about becoming the leader you were never trained to be. Next time on the podcast, becoming the vascular surgeon you were never trained to be. Step 1, order business cards. Step 2, procure a small knife. Step 3, procure a bottle of rubbing alcohol.
You're listening to the Careers by Jen podcast with me, Jen Swanson, the podcast that helps you to get the job, love your work, and advance your career. You started as a worker, one of the team, and through hard work and advancement, time and effort, opportunity and promotion, or a sudden position opening, you find yourself in a management or leadership role. And suddenly, you go from being one of the team to being the supervisor, the manager, in charge, with lots of experience working the job and not always very much experience in actually leading people or supervising people. So what do you do? Has this happened to you? It's happened to lots of people, and it does every day. How best can you equip yourself if you find yourself in this position? Well, my guest today is Romanella from 360managementservices.com. Rocky is an author, he's a speaker, and he's a trainer in leadership topics. And I began our conversation by asking him, are leaders born or are they made? Right after this.
Are you procrastinating? Do you want to start a job search but aren't quite sure where to begin? Is it all just a little overwhelming? At Careers by Jen, we have a 5-day Jumpstart Your Job Search Challenge to help you get unstuck and move toward finding your dream job. Every day for 5 days, you'll receive an email to your inbox that asks you to complete one task. Every task you complete moves you closer toward your goal. The best part about this challenge is that it's absolutely free. Come over to CareersbyJenn.com and you'll see the 5-day Jumpstart Your Job Search Challenge on the right-hand side of the screen. Click on the image of Jen, sign up with your email address, and you'll be 5 days closer to reaching your goal. Why wait when you can get busy? Visit CareersbyJenn.com after this podcast.
So I'm talking to Romanella, and I want to ask you a question right off the top. Are leaders born or are they made?
Wow, Jen, you really jumped right in there, didn't you?
I do.
Well, that is the proverbial question that most people struggle with and talk a lot about. I believe that leaders are made. I believe that all of us are leaders at one time or another. I think sometimes we get caught up with this thought of a leader has to have a title like manager or CEO. And, for example, for me, I have the greatest title I've ever carried. And I've carried some good ones, CEO, president. Today, I carry the title of grandpa.
Yay!
And that's the greatest title. But I do believe we're all leaders at one time or another, whether it's running the PTA, the soccer coach, hockey coach, cheerleading coach. And it's how we adapt to that leadership, and it's what our leadership style is, and how do we, make a difference in other people's lives.
So today we're going to talk about becoming the leader you were never trained to be, because I know that often people land into management or supervisory type jobs without a lot of training in the art of leadership. And I wonder if you have some pointers for somebody who finds themselves in that kind of a position.
Well, ironically, that's how I started. I went to college to be a high school history teacher and a baseball coach, and no intention of, being a leader, unless if you count being a catcher or if you count, being a captain of a team. And so therefore you are a leader. But no, I went to college to be a high school history teacher. And as I was working at UPS part-time and in those roles, I started to notice that the best managers and the best leaders were those individuals who were able to get their people to connect the dots, to understand, what we were trying to accomplish, and really be trainers, mentors, and teachers. And so I never gave up my teaching passion, but for me, the classroom became a work environment. And so I believe that I could still get that same teaching feeling, just do it in a work environment. So I changed my major to management and graduated St. John's, And then UPS had a promotion from within policy, so I worked my way. And so for me, the two most important things that happened to me was something my dad, who has since passed, said to me. He told me two things when I got the job at UPS as a part-timer on loaded trailers. He said, learn your job and learn some more. And whatever they ask you to do, say yes and thank you. And so as I was growing and developing inside UPS, and they would tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, we have an opportunity for you here, or opportunity to do this. And I may not have been ready, or I may have been nervous. All I could hear is my dad in the background saying, whatever they ask you to do, say yes and thank you. And so when we took on these new assignments and new responsibilities. And so for me, those were the two important things that were always in the back of my mind. Learn your job and learn some more. And whatever they ask you to do, say yes and thank you.
The learn some more intrigues me because I worked for many years in the hospital system, and I worked in a job that was not a leadership job per se. I was, if you remember Radar O'Reilly, it was that kind of a clerical type job where I was working between the nurses and the doctors and organizing everyone and making sure everything was running smoothly. And I always was hungry to learn more than I needed to know. But I know that I worked with people who couldn't explain why you put that letter on this paper or why you did that and did something else. They just knew you had to do it, and they told you to hurry up and do it. So what's the nugget of wisdom in that learn some more piece?
Well, I think for me, it was always this concept of don't stop at the first right answer. And I think many people stop at the first right answer, and obviously because it's a right answer. But if you can challenge yourself, or as the leader can challenge your people to move past that first right answer, I think what you end up with is a deeper, wider answer, or you learn some more in that process of challenging yourself not to stop at the first right answer, and you look past that first right answer. It's funny, when I wrote my book, Tighten the Lug Nuts, it's written in a third person. And the reason why it's written in a third person is as I was growing and developing inside of UPS, I never liked that feeling when someone would come to you and say, Jen would come to a staff meeting or to a meeting and say, hey, Rocky, we've got this new idea, or I got this idea. What do you think? And I always felt like if I said to you, well, Jen, that's a good idea, but what if you did this, or what if you did that? I've always felt like I was stifling conversation. And so my way of challenging you not to stop at the first right answer, or maybe pushing a little bit past your boundaries, is I created this, I think this is character, Joe Scafone. And I would say to you, Jen, sounds like a pretty good idea. But what do you think Joe Scafone would think? You think Joe Scafone would think that's a good idea? And so over the course of my career, Joe Scafone became this individual who helped me challenge maybe you to move past that first right answer, or look at it differently. And it's funny, as people got to know me and worked with me for years, they would come to a meeting and say, hey, I already covered this with Joe. Joe thinks this is a very good idea. I would say, well, okay, that sounds good, but let me think about it. And so I think what you do is you find that way in your own style, which you're most comfortable with, to challenge your people to maybe move past that first right answer and to kind of get deeper and wider in their knowledge base. And so I think that's, people like to get to a spot, they like to get the answer and move on to something else. And I think it's that whole concept, as you were saying, how do you challenge yourself and challenge your people in a positive way to kind of move past that first right answer and understand their job maybe in a deeper, wider sense.
And so you worked your way up through UPS? Yes.
I started on loaded trailers, and then got the opportunity to become a driver. I drove for a while. I had my uniform. My grandmother, I lived in a two-family, real typical Italian family, lived in a two-family house. My aunt, my grandmother, and Dawn, that lived downstairs. She had my uniform pressed every day. I was a driver, and then got promoted from a delivery driver into full-time supervision. And then, as I said, as this promotion from within policy, they would tap me on the shoulder, and I moved across the country 8 times. It's funny you said Radio O'Reilly. I actually was the Iowa district manager, and I visited Ottumwa, Iowa, the home of Radio O'Reilly. But the lesson I learned as I was growing and developing inside UPS is that as a leader, it's important for you to recognize that there are going to be many times when you have to believe in your people until they're ready to believe in themselves. And for me, the example was when someone said to me, we purchase mailboxes, et cetera, as an organization. And then they came to me and said, hey, we want you to, understand this piece of the business, and that's going to be a direct report to you. And I had no knowledge of franchising. I had no understanding of it. And I was a more traditional UPSer. And so UPS believed in Rocky Romanella well ahead of when Rocky Romanella believed in himself. And so I think as leaders, you have to believe in your people until they're ready to believe in themselves. And then there's that kind of break-even point where your knowledge and your skill and your confidence kind of match up. And then as a leader, then as you're growing and developing and you're really good and your skills are really good and your confidence is really good, that's when you step back and you don't overmanage them. That's when you're the cheerleader. Hey, Jennifer, keep up the good work. You're really doing good. You got this. Whatever help you need from me. You go from a work with to a talk with. And I think that was the important lesson for me in this promotion from within world. And as a leader, I recognize that, I see something in somebody. I really believe they can do more. I believe they can handle more. The question that we started out with, are leaders born or they made? And I think most people are always concerned about taking on additional responsibility. But when you, as the person recommending them, can show that confidence in them, can show that faith in them, and they look at you like, well, I know you're going to be there for me. I believe that's what helps them, kind of bridge that confidence gap. And then boom, once they hit it, it's just fun to watch them take that step back and really, applaud their successes.
I have a family member who is now in a supervisory position that he wasn't in before. And I know that he suffers from anxiety about knowing what to do. And, when that phone is going to ring at 3 a.m. and he's the one on call and he's got to call the shots and make the decisions. And he's working in law enforcement, so it sometimes is life and death. It could be terrifying. And so what advice do you have for somebody who feels like they're not capable or competent, and yet they've been placed in this position?
Well, first of all, we're all nervous. And secondly, all of us have those moments where, you kind of, you look in the mirror and you're wondering, do I have the capabilities to do this? Am I a little bit over my head? And so I think that that's important. To recognize that you're not the only one that's feeling like that. And we all go through that. I always think that the true test of your leadership and the true test of how you'll be evaluated is through this concept of legacy. And for me, legacy really comes down to, do you leave things a little better than you found them? So if every day he goes in there, or as time goes on, he looks back and he says, things are a little bit better. People are better because of their time with me. It may not be perfect, but if you're making things better and things are better because of you, then you really are an effective leader. And I think sometimes the mistake people make is I had a 5th grade nun in Catholic school that used to always say to us, it's not where you are, it's where you are from where you started. Because many times, he may look at other police officers or other peers that are in leadership roles and evaluate himself against them. But if he evaluates himself from where he is, from where he started, he may be pretty impressed with the gains that he's made over the course of time. And so I think that that's what's so important, is to understand where you are from where you started, recognize that, hey, look, we all had those rough days. We all had those days where we drove home at night thinking, what did I get myself into? Am I really ready for the job? And I think, I think one of the things, as I'm kind of wrapping up this thought, would be the biggest thing you need to understand is what you don't know. Like I always say, the biggest thing I know is what I don't know. And so what I don't know, that's when you reach out to people. It's when you build your sort of library of, people who can help you. It's the people who can help you from a mentoring point of view. It's the people who can help you from a knowledge point of view. But the biggest thing you need to understand is what you don't understand, and don't be afraid of it. I mean, it's not a sign of weakness because you reach out for help. In fact, it's the opposite. It's a sign that you have enough confidence in your abilities and enough confidence in yourself that you can reach out and say, you know what, I'm really good at this, but I'm not really great at that, and I think I need some help in there. So
we're going to take a break and for a commercial for just a moment. But when we come back, I want to ask you what the difference is now in theory, in practice, in management, in leadership, and how that differs from how it used to be. So I want to ask you what you've noticed has changed in the work that you've done over maybe even the past 10 years. So we'll come right back to that question.
You've updated your resume, you've sent it out, and you've been selected for an interview. Congratulations! And now, you want to get ready, really ready. This is where Careers by Jen can help. We have a comprehensive online course called How to Ace a Job Interview When You Haven't Interviewed in a Long Time. This video-based course is jam-packed with information, advice, and exercises to help you get completely prepared to walk into an interview situation with confidence. From exactly what to prepare in advance, to how to answer common questions, to what questions you might ask the interviewer, and so much more, this course is designed to get you ready. Visit CareersbyJenn.com and click on Training Resources to see the curriculum, preview a couple of the introductory lessons, and see what others who have taken the course are saying about it. Visit CareersbyJenn.com and get ready to ace your next interview.
I'm speaking with Rocky Romanella, and I asked you a question right before we took a break. So what differences have you noticed in styles or methods or the theory around leadership?
I think that's a great question. And I've got to tell you, I've done quite a few podcasts and interviews and keynote speaking, and no one's ever asked me that question.
Oh, good. Yay.
So, nice job, Jennifer. So I think, and I think it's a great question, because if you think about the essence of leadership is kind of helping your people build that bridge to the future. It's your ability to motivate and inspire your people to do things that they've never done before. So I think the biggest change is people and how you motivate those people. And, I always ask the question, how do you motivate people? And everybody always says, you treat people with dignity and respect. That's true morally and ethically, but not in the way you motivate them. You motivate people by what motivates them. What are the things that excite them? What are the things that I think change, they've changed over time that you have to adjust to? And so I think, the answer to that question is it's people. It's the differences in people today versus 20, 30 years ago. And, I'll give you my example of me personally. When I started at UPS in 1976, and I love when people always say, today's kids or today's employees don't want to work hard. Hey, I started at UPS in 1976. I had a beard, a ponytail, and I knew every word to Stairway to Heaven. You think anybody thought I was going anywhere? I don't think so, right? And so I think that it really comes down to how do you touch individuals and how do you understand them? And so in my generation, or for me personally, if you ask the question, does UPS need Rocky Romanella or does Rocky Romanella need UPS? I would have said, no, I need UPS. And that's how I was brought up. My dad came from Italy. Get a job, take care of your family, and that's what's so important. The next generation was more of, no, they need us. We really bring a lot to the table. I think today's generation is somewhere, the millennials, and I find them very fascinating to work with. I think that they're somewhere in the middle. I think the difference is they ask good questions. They're much more prepared than we were when they started work. Unfortunately, sometimes we feel challenged when people ask us good questions. So for example, when they tapped me on the shoulder on Monday and said, Rocky, you're going to move to Des Moines, Iowa, and with 4 kids in tow, I go home and tell Deb, hey, got to go to Des Moines. Need a job, got to support the family, right? Next generation would have been, no, I don't need this job. I'm going somewhere else. The millennials would say to you, okay, well, what does this mean to me? How does this fit into my career development? Is this a good move for me? How's this going to impact my family? Well, those aren't bad questions. Those are just good questions that we're not used to someone. So I think to answer your question is, I think the biggest change for me is understanding the workforce and the people you're working with and how to manage them and accept their strengths, understand some of their weaknesses and how do you help them with their weaknesses, but understand what it takes to motivate them and touch them and help them get to what they're trying to get to.
So I would think that understanding the generations and how the generations function would be part of that understanding. And knowing how to motivate people. I've done some work with intergenerational workplaces, and you're right. There are different points of view or frames or lenses, whatever analogy you want to use, through which we see the work that we do. And it would seem to me that understanding how each generation functions would help a manager in that kind of work.
I would agree. And I would say, it's funny, before we got on the air, you and I were talking and you had said your son was back east and you didn't get a chance to talk to him yet because he came back from vacation, dove right into work and works 10 to 12 hour days. Well, isn't that what our generation was supposed to be known for? So think about it. I mean, today's generation, my 4 kids and my 2 son-in-laws and daughter-in-law have tremendous work ethics. The difference is they ask good questions. And so I think they don't challenge you in a disrespectful way. Now, sometimes, look, let's face it, there's always 20% of the people that are going, in my generation too, so every generation has that group of people that, put them off to the side and don't count everybody in that group there. But 80% of the people want to do a good job. They're working hard. And so I just think, to your point, it's how do you understand this generation and how you motivate them? And I think you got to treat them as individuals. You got to understand them as individuals and don't lump them all together as, oh, you're the millennial, so therefore you're not going to work hard. And like I said, I mean, your son is a great example. My kids and my son-in-laws and daughter-in-law are just great examples. And so many of their friends are as well. So I think that there's a lot of skill in this generation, but it's your ability to take the time to understand them, I think, is so important.
So as a leader, as a manager, it's that relational work, that getting to know the person in a one-to-one relationship that can really help you to come alongside them and help to motivate them.
I think that's excellent. That's an excellent point. I would agree with the way you summarize it. And I think the second piece of that would be is the mistake that leaders, I think, make in every generation. And it's when they start to believe it's about them. It's not about you. It's about your people, right? Think about the people you've worked for, or I've worked for. You're sitting in a meeting and they say to you, you don't know how tough I got it. You don't know what it's like to be me. And you're thinking to yourself, really? I mean, you got a pretty good job. You're making a lot more money than I am. And, so if you think about it, the mistake that leaders make is they make it about them. Well, it's never about you. It's about your people. It's about what motivates them. It's about how do you get them to, to connect the dots. Do you look at your people? Are they part of the solution or are they part of the problem? Do your people feel valued? And if they do, that now you're starting to connect with them and you're starting to get them to feel like, okay, if I don't come to work, I always ask the question to people, if they don't come to work, does anybody notice? Well, how many people go to work? Nobody, how many people don't go to work? Nobody notices. And when they're there, nobody notices either. So at some point, how motivated are you if nobody even notices you or, takes the time to say, hey, good morning, Jen, how's everything? Hey, nice job yesterday. Thanks for coming in, or thanks for all the things you do on behalf of our organization. Those simple things like that, those simple acts of kindness go a long way. So I think that's such an important part of, your role as a leader is to not make it about you, but make it about them and understand what motivates them and how do you make them feel good about the role they play inside the organization.
There's an authenticity to that, to what you just said. And I know that some of the managers that were my favorite to work for were people that seemed real and that would come and they weren't giving lip service. They actually, when they saw you, they wanted to know how things were going or what you thought about this or that. And they actually listened. And I think that was the difference between a great manager and somebody who was just being a manager and playing the role or being bossy or whatever it was. I respected the ones that actually seemed authentic and real much more.
Well, I think that's true. And think about all these people, and pick a name if you want or whatever, they get themselves in trouble all the time. They get themselves in trouble because they think they're above everybody else. And if you think about it, it's really, I think the mistake that people make is, and especially in leadership, senior leadership roles, is the company and the brand isn't you. The company and the brand is that frontline person who's closest to your customer. When we would move around the country, and Debbie would say, "Oh, the neighbors invited us to a get to know you party," and I would always say, "Hon, why are we going? We're gonna move again, and then we're gonna be sad. So let's not meet anybody." And of course, she'd say, "We're gonna go meet the neighbors. We're gonna get to know people." And so I'd go to meet some people and go to the dinner or whatever. And people would say, "Who do you work for?" And I would say, "I work for UPS." And then the next thing happened that to me was I think it's one of the most rewarding parts of my job. I'd say, "Yeah, I work for UPS." And somebody would say, "Hey, you know my driver?" Well, that means that the driver is UPS, right? That's the brand. They're carrying the brand. They're the brand identity. It's not the CEO of UPS. It's not Rocky Romanella. It's not Scott Davis or Mike Eskew. So I think that's the mistake that people make to hire to get in an organization. I think it's about them. No, the customer never sees you. I think it's it's like this whole, TV show, Undercover Boss. I mean, I would never want to be undercover boss. It would break my heart that nobody knows who you are. I mean, how excited. I mean, you're running around and you're thinking to yourself, this is a good thing that nobody knows who you are. I don't think that's a good thing. You want to be cheers. Everybody knows your name.
That's
I think
right.
about the hospital. Think about the hospital you worked in, right? I mean, I know there's a lot of people in the hospital, nurses, doctors, technicians. You know it better than I do. But if the if the president or the CEO of the hospital at least walks around and says hello to people, people believe they know him just because they say hi, they walk around, they eat in the cafeteria. Well, that's great leadership.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're looking for in a leader you want to follow, a leader that you want to listen to, a leader that you want, okay, I see the strategy we're trying to do. I want to do it. I want to try to, kind of participate and be part of this success. It's not the leader who's sitting up. It's not the leader who's sitting in a Bentley driving to work and has a parking lot. It used to drive me crazy. Anybody that had a parking lot that said CEO or, or whatever. I mean, you should not have a personal parking spot. That means you think you're better than everybody else.
That's right. That's true. There's such compassion exuding from you, Rocky. And can you tell me a bit about how you came to be doing all this work that you're doing now, the book that you wrote and the speaking that you do? And it's just coming from a place of such kindness and compassion, it feels like to me.
Well, thank you very much. Well, it starts with this concept of legacy. Do you leave things a little better than you found them? Or are people better because of their time with you? And I think that, I felt like I had a wonderful career. I met some wonderful people along the way, was mentored by some great people along the way. And hopefully people feel the same way about their time with me. And I felt like after all these years, if I had the opportunity to leave a little bit of a legacy, why not? And the book gave me the opportunity to kind of recognize two important people in my life. My dad, who was such an important part of my life growing up, and really kind of gave me some wonderful thoughts and concept, and really became sort of like the core of who I am. We talked about the two things he told me when I got the job. The third thing he told me is probably the thing that, I think is probably the core of Rocky Romanella. He said to me one day when I was in my, teens, he said, it's what you do and no one's watching that counts. And I said, Dad, that's the best part. You just kind of ruined it. And no one's watching. And he said to me, there's always two people watching, the man upstairs and you when you look in that mirror. And so you have to be able to put your head on a pillow at night. And so that always stuck with me. And then in my adult life, it's been my wife, Debbie, who's been just a fantastic friend, mentor, partner. And some of the key leadership, thoughts and concepts that I used throughout my career really came from her, and just the way conversations we would have. And if you have a few minutes, I'd tell you probably the one that I think really says the most about her, and one of the ones that was really a kind of core for me in leading. We went out to dinner one night with a couple we had met, and so we have four kids, 2 girls, 2 boys, and so the wife says to Debbie, "Hey, so who's your favorite kid?" And so I'm thinking to myself, well, I don't think I ever heard her get asked that. So I kind of pushed back a little bit. So I want to see how she answers this. And she goes, well, I don't have a favorite. And so the other lady said, no, come on. It's okay. I won't tell them. I mean, who's your favorite? Is it Jean Marie, Nicole, Rocky, Andrew? And she goes, no, I don't have a favorite. They're all my favorite. And she said, well, that can't be possible. She goes, each of them gets what they need when they need it. I thought about that. Each of them gets what they need when they need it. So therefore, they always feel like they're the special one because they're getting what they need. And I thought to myself, number one, how thoughtful. It just said so much about who she is as a person. And then from that moment forward, I managed that same way. It wouldn't be unusual for me to have a staff of 15, 18 direct reports, in the business units I was running. And so if you had a seasoned CFO, for example, he or she didn't need you to overmanage them.
Right.
So what they needed was keep up the good work. They needed the authority that goes with the responsibility, let them run. If If you had a brand new sales manager, well, what they needed was more of your time. So each of them got what they need when they needed it. And to me, that was such a thoughtful, brilliant, insightful thing that she said. And so for me, some of those lessons were, were part of what's in the book. And then I took my, kind of 36 years of UPS and things I learned. And, once I retired from UPS, I was recruited to be a CEO of a telecom company. So I took all those together and put it in my book, Tighten the Lug Nuts. And there's stories in I guess you can tell I got to tell a story in everything I do. So there's stories in each chapter, and then, Joe Scafone, and it's told from my friend Joe Scafone, from the narrative by Joe Scafone.
That's wonderful. Well, Rocky, where can people find out more about you and find your book?
Well, our website is very interactive. It's it's the number 3, and then the word 60, SIXTY, managementservices.com. If I had to do over again, I would have come up with a shorter, more creative name, but unfortunately I did not. And so it's 3, the number 3 and the word 60, managementservice.com. Very interactive. I get a lot of people asking me questions. A lot of people give me feedback on the book. So I really enjoy that. My email is Rocky Romanella. It's just ROCKY Romanella, my last name @gmail.com. The book is on Amazon. We're at a 5-star book, which is pretty cool. And we get a lot of good reviews. So I appreciate that. Barnes & Noble online. And I think what's been really kind of moving, which has been a lot of fun lately, is I get a lot of requests to do, I'm calling them lunch and learns, but they're kind of like book clubs. Companies will buy the books for their people, and then I dial in.
Nice.
And I really enjoy that. You have a good, hour and a half conversation, dialogue, so it works out good. And so that's probably the best way to get me. We're on Twitter. We're 360 Management on Twitter, Instagram. So we have some fun with that on Facebook. So most of the social media handles, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. So I thought it was interesting when you asked me the question about how I've been doing all this. I think the true story, though, is the day I retired, I said to Debbie, I said, hey, so what are we doing today? And she said, I don't know what you're doing. Because I've been doing a lot of stuff by myself for a while. So if you think you're following me around the shopping center here, you're crazy. So I'm thinking, all right. So I remember she said to me one day, didn't you say you were going to write a book? I said, yeah, I've been talking about it. She goes, well, I wouldn't talk about it anymore. I go write the book. If you think you're okay, I got it. So
you got on with it, eh? Your inspiration.
Yeah, that's my inspiration. Yeah, that's right. My inspiration was, and then of course, in business, everything's about value add. So I learned pretty quickly that it's not value add when she gives you a list and you go to the store and buy more. I'm like, hey. She's like, what, do you think I forgot something? Just buy it. Okay, sorry.
I love it. What's one last piece of advice for the person who finds themselves in a leadership position accidentally?
We're all leaders at one time or another. It really comes down to, think about legacy. So I always talk about, what's the word that you want people to use when describing you? And so for me, the word is thoughtful. I would want to be considered a thoughtful leader. So and then from that point, you work backwards. You say, okay, when I retire someday, I want people to think of me as a thoughtful leader. And so throughout your career, you're always thinking about, I want to be thoughtful. A thoughtful leader treats your people with dignity and respect. A thoughtful leader, treats people, the right way, or, has those simple acts of kindness. So how do you want to be thought of? And that's, I guess, could be considered your legacy. So that's, you think about, your cousin as the police officer. How does he want to be thought of? Forget about what rank he gets to, forget about, did he achieve this level? How does he want to be remembered and thought of? And what's that adjective? And then, you know what? If he gets there someday, you know what? He's really successful.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Hey, listen, a friend in Canada, come on. I love Canadians. I love Canada. I have a lot of relatives in Toronto, so I love Canada.
All right. Well, if you're ever on the West Coast, we'll do coffee.
Yeah, I want to do Whistler. I want to try skiing in Whistler one time.
Oh, so. There you go. It's a popular place.
Yeah, maybe I'll let you know before I get out there.
Excellent. You've been listening to Careers by Jen with Jen Swanson. If you like what you heard, please share this. If every single person listening today shared this episode with just one friend, our audience would be twice as big just like that. And the more people we can help with our content, the better. So help out a friend, and help grow our audience by sharing this show with someone you know who would benefit from the content. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that, and together we can make a difference. Until next time, take good care.